The Suicide Squad, not to be confused with Suicide Squad, was written and directed by James Gunn. It stars a vast array of people, including mainstays like Nathan Fillion, Michael Rooker, and Sean Gunn, of course. But we also have Margot Robbie, this invisible guy, John something, I don't know. Joel Kinnaman, Idris Elba, David Dastmalchian, Daniela Melchior. Who else haven't I talked about? Viola Davis, great performance. There's so many, and I'm not going to name them all because it would be a task, but I'm not underselling it when I say everyone does a great job. And when I talk about their character, I may say their name, I may repeat names. It's such a long list of great people. But this does such a great opening as well, because we see some of the characters we've seen in promotional material, but only about half the team. So it's like, well, maybe some of these will die off and then the teams will merge or something like that. You know, we've got this idea that the idea of the Suicide Squad is people will die. It's one thing the earlier version did right. One. But we get this, initial storm the beach, and basically that whole entire team is wiped out. And like I say, some of them are featured in promotional material. Flulaborg's javelin, which then becomes a critical point later on. So his character is actually more important than it looks, given that he dies quite early on. But, he was so prevalent in marketing, he's done a lot of interviews, as has Michael Rooker and Nathan Fillion. But they were just the first team. They were just the sacrifices so that the rest of the film could happen. And Idris Elba, once again, does not disappoint. His performance was great. I don't think I've seen a film that I have heard him swear so much. It was jarring for the first few, but after that, I'm like, I'm for it. Okay. I like the fact that they have a character who is so similar to Deadshot in many ways. He can hit a target really effortlessly. It's Deadshot in a new skin, realistically. And they have, this whole relationship with the daughter, but it's not a good one. Gunn once again subverts our expectations. That's what he's really good at. And I love the fact that they had that. It was a nod back, saying like, yeah, it's this plot again, but he doesn't actually care. He's more annoyed at the fact that she would use this, like Amanda Waller, would use this against him. That's what he's more annoyed at. That's why he's willing to do it. It's more the idea of putting this child through that, whether it's his or not. But his relationship with Ratcatcher 2 helps him realise that actually I can have a good relationship with a daughter figure. He realises that even though a daughter isn't something he wanted, or a child in general, it is something that maybe he needs. And conversely, their relationship is so well played that Danielle Melchior portrays this idea that she needs a new father figure after her original father, played by Taika Waititi, dies. He's no longer with us, so she needs a father figure to replace him. And throughout the film, they are a good chunk of the heart at its core. There's a lot of emotion here. There's a lot of realistic human interaction here. There's a lot of humour and weird, horrific moments, but this is what Gunn does masterfully. He brings the surreal, the sublime, the sickening all together in a beautiful melange. I love that word. But he brings it all together and none of it overpowers the other. A lot of people, when they try and mix things like, say, horror and comedy and maybe a third element in the mix, and a lot of superhero films are like that, they're multi-genre, one side gets overplayed compared to the other. It's a very difficult balancing act for a lot of people. The fact that Gunn wrote and directed it meant that what was on the screen matched what was on the page. And that was a wonderful matching of these elements. We have a heartfelt moment suddenly followed up by something really disturbing. And they're not cancelling each other out. The heart of the film, this relationship, as I mentioned, does not get overshadowed by a giant starfish, which itself is not overshadowed by a bumbling, lumbering creature just meandering about, being just extra. Because Sylvester Stallone voicing King Shark, Nanaue, is something I didn't know I needed, but I really did need. This was amazing. It captured this raw element of a character. He was just a human-shaped shark with the small brain that would entail. And it's great, the performance. The fact that Sly Stallone just leaned into it, just hand. Moments like that are just great. And it's obviously the whole thing. If the animation of it, if the actual character itself visibly didn't work, it wouldn't have worked. And the on-set version, Steve Agee, I want to say, someone will correct me, I'm sure, who is also one of the controllers in the control room. It's where controllers live. But he obviously also would have had a great hand in that after I'd done that joke. But you know what I mean. Everything came together so well. And yes, while I'm talking about the animation, like, there are so many good moments that you get to see this creature up close. That's when an effects team knows how good their work is. You can see it up close in very fine detail. You can see the tiny little scales. The eyes move like a shark's. It was so gorgeous. And this is a horrific looking creature, obviously, with a mouth like that. Jesus. But there's a lot of beauty in the detailing. Same with Starro. But yeah, so Peter Capaldi was amazing as the Thinker. He brought the character from In the Thick of It. Or is it just The Thick of It? Someone correct me and tell me what the character's name is. I've forgotten. But he brought a lot of that no-nonsense attitude that he'd finely tuned over seasons of that into this character. There are moments in his run as the Doctor that came out as well. I think Peter Capaldi is good at doing that. They're very blunt. This is how it is. Take it or leave it. But he brought that kind of swagger, that cockiness to it, and I like that. I think it was a great performance from him. David Dastmalchian, I will watch in almost anything, and that is a pretty close pronunciation. He was on Kevin Smith's thing ages ago to sort of guide people in pronunciation, and he basically said, like, the small chin. So that's my pronunciation guide that I'm now giving to you. But yeah, I think he was great in this. He had a lot of pathos for what most people probably wrote off looking at the promotional material, etc., as a very silly one-note character. It's a guy who throws dots, polka dots, around. How is that funny? How is that going to work? But he brings a lot of pathos to it. He's got a lot of issues. And unfortunately, he's also got this interdimensional virus that causes him to expel polka dots that are very corrosive and destructive. Turning it to a positive use is great. And the fact that Idris Elba as Bloodsport becomes a leader of this team and knows the strengths and weaknesses of each character to exploit them to their full, and it is exploiting them. But I love also all of the moments when we see what he sees and everyone is his mother. I took a note of this woman's name and I've forgotten it again, but the woman who plays his mother during all of this does so well at just replicating what would be on screen. You know the character she's meant to be at the time. She's portraying it very well. And I just think it's great that this joke didn't feel overused. They used it sparingly, but when it was used, it was effective. The group as his mother was terrifying, and it should be. This is his psychosis. This is part of his issues. And I loved it. I loved it for that. But yeah, the whole thing was so great, and I can't end this without talking about Viola Davis's performance as Waller. There are moments when, she's quite fun, but for the most part, she is the hard character we know. It's a great performance by her. When she is, you will do what I want, and she's in, I'm going to flip the switch mode, everything like that. When she's in those moments, it is amazing. I was as terrified as anyone in that office would be. I was absolutely waiting for her to just come out the screen and throttle me going, do your job or something. It was such a commanding performance, much better than the previous installment. She was, I don't want to use the word, but I will. She was a bitch in the first one. In this one, I say the first one, they are technically separate, I would say. But in this one, she was a boss. There is a difference. I know women have tried to reclaim the other one, but I still think of it as a very slur word and I don't like to use it. But in the first one, that's all she was. Like I say, here, she was in command. It was a vastly different performance. That is because of writing and directing. But the last thing I want to talk about is the surprise to many of us, I'm sure. The Invisible Man himself, you can't see him. but we did, and we're glad we did. John Cena as Peacemaker. And part of me doing this video now is because I was like, I need to watch the Suicide Squad because I want to watch Peacemaker. I meant to, and then I put it to one side. You know what it's like. But I was so impressed by John Cena's performance. Apparently he's really great at improv, which I guess, given his wrestling career, you've got to be good at thinking on your feet. If something goes wrong from what was choreographed before, because I will say now, wrestling isn't fake. On the level that he's doing it, it's all storied, it's a film, it's or a TV series, it's long form scripted media. But the actual wrestling parts, whilst they're not a fight in the sense of they're actually fighting, there are beats they've got to hit. It's like a film fight. There are choreographed moments that they've got to hit, but it is still an athletic thing. There's a lot of physicality to it. Wrestling isn't fake, it's just scripted. Not taking questions on that. But, going back to the point, so he has to know to think on his feet in case any of that choreography, any of that scripting goes wrong. I know I said choreography instead of choreography. I'm aware of it, it's fine. But if anything goes wrong, he has to be aware and ready to respond. So of course, his improv skills are going to be great. And even his more heavy moments were amazing. Towards the end of the film, when he's sort of antagonistic, really, he's willing to do anything. I mean, this is a great idea of a character. It's very much like the Punisher in a way. A certain type of person who has an ideal and will do anything to achieve that. We've had people like that in history. We don't like to talk about them anymore. But a lot of these people think what they're doing is right. And this guy thinks that he's creating peace. And there's a very funny line about it, yes, peace is all I strive for, and I'll kill every man, woman and child I need to until I get it. That tells you everything about the character. The fact, though, that John Cena delivers those lines with a straight face, even though that is a really silly line, taken out of context. Again, great acting. But yeah, so towards the end, when he's like, I will kill you so that this information does not get out. It was terrifying. I grew so much more respect for this man. I love the guy anyway. I mean, I've seen interviews, mainly around this, but other ones as well in the past, and he's always in a suit. He always dresses up. And he doesn't need to. People know who he is. This is, a guy who has done a similar thing to Dwayne Johnson. He's gone from wrestling into acting. I'm glad he has. I think we would have been robbed of a great performer if he'd have decided not to do that. It's clear that this is a love he has. Part of what got him into wrestling possibly was the performance side of it. I don't know. But like I say, he always dresses up really smart. And actually, so does Dwayne Johnson for the most part. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe something about being a wrestler makes you like super crisp and neat. I will never do that. I don't find them comfortable. Don't try. But yeah, so the Suicide Squad was a vast improvement on what came before. The only downside, I think, is that there were too many characters, and making sure they all got their moment was a bit of a struggle, I think, even in its 2-hour plus runtime. It sometimes left characters by the wayside. I mean, it's come to my attention just now that I haven't really talked about Harley, because there's a few moments, and I think obviously with the javelin, but she's mainly just there as a bit of comic relief in the background. She isn't the main focus, and I think the problem with the previous one was that they tried to put too much focus on her, because that's a fan favourite character. It was a good idea of James Gunn to bring lesser known characters to the fore. Make us feel for these. We already know this character so well. We've seen so many interpretations. So it's a Joker but female, but also a little extra. I'm not taking away all of Harley's individual things, but on a very surface level, she's the Joker but female. But we have all these different characters that deserve their time in the spotlight. I mean, why do most of us know James Gunn? Because of Guardians of the Galaxy. What was that? Bringing lesser-known characters into the spotlight and making them work. It's his thing. I mean, I say most of us because I had seen Super beforehand, so I was ahead of the curve. I sound like a hipster now. But yeah, so the Suicide Squad, vast improvement over the first one because it didn't just try and do the same thing. It allowed itself to be silly. It allowed itself to be fun. It allowed itself to be absolutely dark and horrific. It allowed itself to just be its own thing, and I'm so glad that it did. And I want to end this video by saying I've been sat here in this t-shirt, wrong way, I get very confused, all the way through, and that's my little sight gag for you all. So until next time, as always, thank you for watching, and take care.